Hello, hello, and welcome all to Overtime. I would like to get a sound check. Oh, dear Lord, if the sound works, nobody would be more surprised than me. I don't have my normal panel with me that would probably lie to me anyway and tell me that we had sound when we really didn't. I'm looking here; it suggests we have sound, so I'm gonna proceed as if we do. That would be 3 times in a row, which is really rather remarkable for this show. Joe will be joining us any minute, so I figured I would just lazily roll in. I think the show is always better when Joe is here. He's intelligent, as everyone knows, always has something to say on it, and understands a number of these topics far better than I do. So he will arrive as soon as possible, but I also did want to yep. Okay. So we're definitely in apocalyptic territory. There's a virus consuming the planet. There's turmoil, war, and strife, and In Time has successfully broadcast, for the most part, on time and with sound for almost an entire week. It looks like we got one show left. I'll try not to jinx it. That's tomorrow after dark. Anyone who wants to join us, you can come in and hang out with us. Just we'll be chatting about the week's shows, the week in news, and any other topics that you guys would like to discuss. So come join us for After Dark. It's everybody's welcome. Hopefully we're going to try to go back to getting some new and original guests. So hope you will join us. Meanwhile, this week, the cornerstone of Biden's domestic agenda is $550 billion infrastructure deal and a $3.5 trillion spending bill have been repeatedly postponed and trimmed back. They were supposed to get forward progress on it today, and once again, it has been postponed. Does the light come with the sound? It has it has been postponed again today. They're still trying to make some progress tonight, but Biden has come out and said he anticipates they're going to make progress, and right now the Dems say they're not. Again, this is one of the areas of expertise for Joe, so we'll wait diving into that until we have him. But the Democrats do want to try to get this done before he goes to Europe on the 3rd. Once he does, it's a lot harder you can't just fly the bill out there to get him to sign it. I mean, you could, but that's not usual standard operating procedure. He's going to be in Europe. They're going to wait until he gets back to sign the bill, so it's just one more delay. So they're trying to get that done by the 3rd. And so far, Democrats do appear to have failed to deliver. Meanwhile, a new study by the Americans for Tax Fairness and the Institute for Policy Studies program on equality finds that the already extremely wealthy, roughly 700 people, the billionaires in the U.S., the average billionaire has actually seen their net worth go up by 70% in this country, more than $5 trillion total. During the pandemic, Democrats have seen this as an opportunity to target the group with a new round of taxes, primarily on capital gains as opposed to standard income tax. And they're using the fact that even in the pandemic, they were able to leverage their currently existing money into far more. And I think Joe is coming in now. So hello, Joe. So you are. They should be able to. Well, they can see your screen, and I suspect. Could I get a sound check?
I've got the camera off. I'm changing my shirt.
No worries. All right. Well, they should be able to hear you, and it looks like everything's going good. So thank you for joining us. And I was lamenting what happens to this show when you're not here. So I'm glad you were able to join us. Thank you so much. I also lament the fact that between the two of us, only one of us has a real job. Only so much I could complain, but we're on a streak. This is now our 3rd show in a row that started on time, and our 3rd show that started without sound issues. I don't know what that means, but so we got a 4th show tomorrow, and we'll see. But Jesus, Jake for the $2 super chat. Jake, thank you so much for your support. What did I miss now? Joe, apparently. But other than that, we've literally just started. And so all
I was in a business meeting. I'm in a group of people. We're looking to buy a game company, and it's very exciting. We're just about there. And
you are going to have to tell me more about that. I actually used to run a game company, but that's
really?
another. Yes, sir. oh Jesus, it was Legacy Games. We got sued by Legacy Interactive because they said that was fun when a $4 million lawsuit showed up on my door. They were suing me personally. I was just like, it's Legacy Games, Legacy, who the hell not? Okay. But that was fun. Anyways, we'll talk more. I'd dying to hear what you're talking about. So, all right. Well, all I've covered really is twofold. That, of course, right now they're trying to get the both the what is it? 3.5 trillion spending bill and the 550 billion infrastructure bill passed. They want to try to get that passed before Biden goes to Europe, because once he goes, it's a lot harder to get him to sign it. He's not going to be physically present with the bill, and so they want to try to get that done today. They thought they'd have forward progress, but it looks like that's been tanked. So I'd love to discuss that with you, because I think you know far more about that than I do. And also that a new study from the Americans for Tax Fairness found that the average billionaire actually has seen their net worth rise by over 70% during the pandemic, more than $5 trillion total. And that this is sort of the cornerstone of at least where, well, it's not where they're going to be getting a huge amount of their money, but it's changes in the tax plan, which would include an increase in capital gains and a decrease in deductions to the roughly 700 people who have over $1 billion and saw that go up, while most of the rest of the world saw their money going down. Meanwhile, former governor, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo was charged today in a sexual misconduct complaint in New York. It's a criminal complaint which alleges that he groped a female aide at the governor's residence on December 7th, 2020. The charge carries a penalty of up to 1 year in prison, and I think we all saw this coming at some point. I guess the district attorney in New York said he was, the attorney general said he was surprised that this came. I don't understand how anyone. I mean, all of these allegations were criminal. This looked like they were planning to go to that point at some point. So I don't know what the surprise is, but we'll get into that too. The company Facebook has changed its name today to Meta Platforms Inc., or just Meta for short. Zuckerberg claims that they will be producing a virtual 3D metaverse. Essentially, this is going to be a world of endless interconnected virtual communities where people can meet, work, and play using VR headsets and augmented reality glasses, smartphone apps, or other devices. You can go shopping, go to concerts, purchase digital clothing, all from the metaverse, which has really been described as kind of a hyped up version of the game's Second Life. They've already launched Horizons Workrooms, which is a part of this. It's sort of, the alpha of this, where it's basically just meeting software for businesses using Oculus VR. Quote, a lot of the metaverse experience is going to be around being able to teleport from one experience to another, Zuckerberg says. Epic Games, developer of the popular game Fortnite, has raised $1 billion to invest in metaverse. Meanwhile, Facebook's new Meta Twitter page, their Twitter profile, reads as follows. Quote, Meta is helping build a future where people have more ways to play and connect in the metaverse. Welcome to the next chapter of social connection. Their Twitter account is locked and the tweets have all been privated. Okay. I'm not even gonna... Wow. All right. In a rather difficult story, ostensibly, I suppose, not a huge one, but one that is worth covering. Hazard High School in Kentucky held a school assembly in which a, quote, man pageant was held. Male students came dressed in lingerie and literally the uniforms from Hooters, the orange, really short shorts and all that other good stuff, and gave lap dances to the staff, including grinding on teachers' pelvises and legs. In attendance was the mayor of Hazard, who also happens to be the principal of the high school. The Kentucky Department of Education has said they will not get involved in the incident because the department, quote, the department does not get involved in local district matters. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear has stopped short of condemning the principal or the school, saying, condemning the principal, who was also seen getting lap dances from several male students, but did say that the situation was, quote, totally unacceptable, inappropriate, shouldn't happen. Numerous members of the school administration, who, by the way, released Photos of this event on public media have come out and claimed that the man pageant has always been, quote, fun and a harmless tradition, which unfortunately just got out of control. However, today, footage surfaced of this event going back 4 years, including one male student dressed in a bra, shorts, and a wig, grinding on 2 other male students while another student threw money at them. Meanwhile, another video has come up of a scene showing a student rubbing his hands all over the principal's chest. Last week, Alec Baldwin shot and killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins, and injured director Joel Soyuz while on the set of the new movie Rust. It appears he was rehearsing for a scene inside a church. The scene called for him to withdraw a revolver pointed at the camera. When he did so, the gun discharged, killing Miss Hutchins. According to investigators so far, it appears as if the gun had been handed to him by the film's assistant director, who told him loudly, in a voice that was heard by many people, that the gun was, quote, cold, which is to say that it was not loaded. The crew did break for lunch, and when they came back, the armorer should have rechecked the weapon, which did not happen. The assistant director, they then practiced the scene, rehearsed the scene. He pulled out the gun, and in so doing, discharged it. A single bullet came out, killing the cinematographer and wounding the director. The assistant director apparently got the gun from the movie's armorer, Hannah Reed. Reed prepared 3 guns, all of them on a cart, outside the church where the scene was being shot. There had been multiple complaints about Reed and that she had not been following proper safety protocols and that she was also very inexperienced. One report said that this was actually her first time working solo on a set, or I should say as the head armorer on the set. There had also been a walkout due to other concerns. I've actually forgotten what those were. I don't recall if they were safety or not. But she also, it appears, that after the shooting, she retrieved the revolver and removed the spent cartridge before investigators had a chance to recover the weapon. And lastly, top Exxon Mobil and other oil giant officials have denied today that they've been spreading disinformation about climate change. They were engaged with congressional Democrats today over allegations that the industry has been involved in a conspiracy to conceal evidence about the dangers of global warming. Chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Representative Carolyn Maloney, said, quote, "They are obviously lying like the tobacco executives were." She is referring to the, I think it was 1997, I forget, an incident where the 7 heads of the tobacco companies, also known as the 7 Dwarves, testified before Congress, and each one of them said, quote, "I believe that nicotine is not addictive." We learned not that long afterwards that internal scientific studies and reports conclusively proved that it was addictive and that, in fact, there were ways to boost the addiction levels of cigarettes so that they could make more profits, which they, in fact, did. Lying to Congress is a felony. However, Representative Ro Kahana of California, who leads the Subcommittee on Environment, said that she hoped that, quote, "Big oil will not follow the same playbook as big tobacco in misrepresenting facts to Congress. Quote, "As I'm sure you realize, that did not turn out too well for them." Is she talking about the same 7 guys that I know, because not one of them was ever indicted, tried, fined, or suffered anything as of this? And the last I saw, the tobacco companies are doing just fine. All right. And that, good sir, is where we stand. What would you like to hit?
Okay, I guess the first thing I'd like to hit is the 2 bills, the infrastructure and the Build Back Better bill.
Yep.
So, all right. So obviously, Manchin has been a big stumbling block to getting that bill passed, the Build Back Better bill passed in the Senate. So they've had to curtail it quite a bit. I mean, it was originally $3.5 trillion, and they basically cut it in half in order to get it. Unfortunately, I would say out of all the things that got taken out, the one that was the most disappointing is the family medical leave and basically the paid leave stuff. Yep. That would allow parents who have a new child or if someone who's got a medical issue, basically to take some paid time off. Right now, the Family and Medical Leave Act allows you to take unpaid time off, but which is great if you have the money to afford not working for a couple months. But this would actually put us on par with the European countries who do this, and basically they find that it's good for worker productivity, it's good for worker morale. Now, and the money is generally in those countries. It is also paid by the government. It's not paid by the companies because it's not fair to a small company to expect them to pay for somebody who's not working. But the way I look at it is, it's disappointing not to get everything in the current environment, considering that it's 50-50 split in the Senate. That and unfortunately, there's two recalcitrant Democrats who really were not big on spending all the money for whatever reason. You're gonna basically, I would rather take progress than not. The thing that is troubling to me is that part of what was held up the vote on the infrastructure bill in the House, which that passed in the Senate, it was like it's actually $1 trillion, not half $1 trillion. It's $1 trillion bill that passed the Senate. The problem in the House is that progressives were holding the bill up pending the result of this other bill. So I saw Representative Prayal. She's basically saying now that even though now they have agreement in the Senate, she's still not going to vote for the infrastructure bill. So again, people on the left find self-destructive ways to turn any getting some progress into getting nothing in the guise of ideological purity. Which is that's what I'm concerned about now, because basically there's some support in the Senate, on the House side for on the Republicans, that is, for the bill, for the transportation bill, but not much. So if the Progressives caucus backs out, it's in limbo, and if that doesn't pass, then I have a feeling that Manchin would pull the plug on the Build Back Better, in which case then we get nothing, which will be very bad for Democrats across the board, whether they're progressive or centrist or anything in between, because and certainly bad for Biden, because if there's no legislative accomplishments to point to, they're going to get killed in the midterms.
And his whole agenda, Biden's whole agenda, is in jeopardy,
unfortunately something that happens a lot, because the right wing is very good at marching off together, even if they don't agree 100%. And the left is not good at that at all. And so I'm hoping that in the next few days that they can hammer something out that at least we get enough people to vote for both. Because particularly the infrastructure bill is badly needed. It's less than the original bill. I think was like $2 trillion, but it's still a lot of money, and it's badly, desperately needed. And in the case of the Build Back Better bill, over a third of it's for climate change. So, and to me, if you're any kind of progressive, I want that money for, because obviously climate change is the biggest threat we're facing, as a species, not just a country.
So, and this threatens really to derail his entire agenda, right? This is the cornerstone of what he's trying to do. If he doesn't get this, it makes it very difficult for him to get anything going forward. Is that right?
That's correct. And the thing is that the thing that upsets me about it, again, all around, is that if you get this, okay, I get nobody got everything they wanted. But just because you don't get what you want today, that doesn't mean you can't fight for the rest tomorrow. It's not like once and done, and that's the end of the game. You can, because the thing is now, as long as the margins are as thin as they are, the only way anything is going to get through is by reconciliation. So normally you can only do reconciliation once. There was a loophole this year that they were able to do reconciliation twice, and that's how the first $2 trillion we spent on the COVID recovery, that was done by reconciliation, and now we're trying to do the Build Back Better through reconciliation. Well, we can do reconciliation again next year, and I don't know if anybody has a calendar, but next year is pretty close. It's not that far off, And it would be important to actually to do that, to take these gains and then immediately work on next year, because you want some more accomplishments going into the midterm election. If the Democrats can get this and then fight for some more of what they didn't get this time, then I think they'd have a hell of a lot to be able to say to the American people, we're the people you should keep here.
Well,
But
in
if we fail
reconciliation,
and basically what will happen is people will see this, that the Democrats, when they have the ability to get something done, if they don't get anything done, people will lose all confidence in all of them. And they're not going to care whether it's conservative Democrats or liberal Democrats or progressive Democrats. They don't give a shit. They're going to say the Democrats were in power and they failed to get anything done.
well, and so, and reconciliation has another problem, which is it has to be deficit neutral. You can pass reconciliation, but you can't add anything to the budget in so doing. So reconciliation has a number of drawbacks aside from the fact that you can only do it once. Have you ever seen the movie Waking Ned Devine?
No.
Waking Ned Devine. Small, I think it was Irish town, and maybe 100 people. And there's a man named Ned Devine who realizes he's got a winning lottery ticket, millions of dollars, and then he dies. And the town, who loved him and he loved the town, they were all friends, realize that if they have someone take his place and pretend to be Ned Devine, they can cash that lottery ticket in, split it equally amongst all of them, and everybody gets $1 million. There you go. One of the people in the town realizes that if even a single person holds out, they can't do this. And so what she says is, I want half the money, and then I'll participate. Otherwise, I'm going to turn everyone in for committing fraud. So now you've got one person holding up all of them. Nobody in the town is going to get a penny if they don't give her half the money, and they have to decide, do we want to take now $500,000 each, which is, of course, still better than nothing, but she gets $50 million herself, or do we? So she ends up holding them hostage. And of course, if you capitulate to that, all of them can do that. What I've always found interesting is whenever you have close margins in the Senate or in the House like this, what ends up happening is everyone thinks, well, at least we do have the majority, or we have the. But what tends to happen is you get individuals who say, oh, I have more power than I've ever had before in my life because my own party needs me in a way they haven't before. So what is going on now? Maya had pointed out here, she said, why would the Republicans help them later? This isn't really, right now, it's not the Republicans causing the problem. The reason Democrats can't pass this is because of Democrats. So who are the two Democrats and what are they doing that's holding this up?
Exactly. That's the thing. In the Senate, there are 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans. The people holding it up are two Democrats, not Republicans. If the Republicans are holding it up in the perspective that we can't get a cloture vote because you need 60 votes for cloture to have a general vote on the floor for a standard bill. So the Republicans are not going to let us get cloture. They're not going to let us even get a vote on anything. So the best we can do is by reconciliation. And the only way to get reconciliation in the Senate is to have every single Democrat, including the conservative ones, vote. It sucks, but that's what we have. And to tell me, I'm sorry, Maya, but $2.75 trillion is not crumbs. That's bullshit. That's just fucking ridiculous. Okay? It's not the double that progressives would like to spend, but basically, and somebody here said burn it all, basically like fuck it all up. This is the destructive nihilism that I see on the far left that really pisses me off. And it's always people who don't stand to lose as much as the other people. This is what happened, in 2016. When I said, hey, look, women's rights are going to take a hit and minority rights are going to take a hit. I heard a lot of people who didn't stand to lose anything with Trump getting elected were like, fuck it. And then we got Trump, and we got 3 conservative judges on the Supreme Court. So now it's 6-3, and it's going to be like that for a generation. You can get mad about the situation. I'm mad about the situation, but all you can do is play the game that exists and try to win the game. Win the game. And if you can't win the game today, move a step toward the winning spot. But this idea that, we can't do it tomorrow. Yes, we can, because there's reconciliation every year. And that's the only way we're going to do things unless and until the Democrats can expand their majority. That's the hand we're dealt.
All right. So, I think she was actually saying something else, but I don't know that I want to speculate. I think the point was
we're not writing blind checks to people. Who's talking about blind checks? We need a money. So what they did was they took out certain provisions. But there's $550 billion on a variety of climate change projects. There's tax credits for poor people. This is going to be, if you like UBI, this is effectively mini UBI for poor people, and it's actually not even just poor people. It's up to 100 people making up to $150,000. It's a small scale UBI. If you're for UBI, you should be for these tax credits because it's the same damn thing. And so if you're going to cut your nose off to spite your face, you can pat yourself on the back and say how pure you are, but you're fucking over those people that will get the money. Hundreds of billions of dollars in tax credits for mostly for poor people.
So what is the objection?
If you're for UBI, you should be for this.
What is the objection of the two?
For the people who need the money.
Well, I think the point may have been, but actually I want to get before, what are the objections of the two Democrats? Because they have to have some, they have to be voicing some specific objections as to why they are not going for the bill.
I'm not strawmanning you, Maya.
I don't want to get into an argument with the live chat. I'd like to try. That's partly my fault because I brought it up because I thought she had an interesting point. But I definitely don't want to get into an argument with the live chat. That's something we do on in time. We're a little better here at overtime. We're not gonna and we can if there's something we do want to address or bring up maybe at the end or I think the Discord would be a spectacular place for it. But I started that, so I do apologize. What are the things that the two are holding out for? What is it that they're not getting that they want in order to move forward?
Well, see, as far as Sinema and Manchin, they wanted to spend less money. Because Manchin's been on record. He's like, well, we just spent $2 trillion on this. We're about to spend $1 trillion on infrastructure. And now, look, I disagree with him because $3.5 trillion sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but it's over 10 years. So that's $350 billion. We certainly could come up with the money. So I disagree with him. But unfortunately, I can't force him to do anything other than what he's doing. Because he has the power, because there's no margin in the Senate. If there were 51 or maybe 52 Democrats in the Senate, hey, we could ignore him because we wouldn't need his vote. But we need his vote. And it goes both ways. We need the progressives in the House because the margin there is only 8. And the Progressive Caucus is more than 8 people. So, basically if they're going to dump the one bill, and then that's going to dump the other bill, and then we get nothing. So how good are you going to feel if we get nothing?
Yeah, which unfortunately they know that, and that's why this works. Unfortunately, it's a hell of a position to be in.
I mean, it's gamesmanship, and the thing is that I don't like it, but that's how it is.
All right, so
I don't live
next?
in fantasy land. I can do math.
So what's next? What do you want to hit next? We talked a bit about Cuomo. Facebook. Okay, let's do Cuomo. That one. Everybody in New York was saying, at least everybody at the in the government in New York was saying that they didn't see this coming. That has to be full of shit. There's no way you didn't see this coming. This was prepared as if it was going to be a criminal trial at some point. So they were gathering evidence of it as if it was a criminal. So they were always going to go with this. It's one count. It's actually a reasonably minor count. It carries at most a year in prison. And assuming that they don't bring up other counts or anything like that, he's going to walk. It's really almost a completely insignificant count. So what are your thoughts?
He's done politically regardless. Mm-hmm. But I guess I would say this. It's not going to have that much damage on him, but I think that the person he did this to still deserves their day in court. They still deserve to have that person prosecuted. And I think victims everywhere deserve to have for this person to have their day in court, because a lot of people don't get their day in court. And we have to, at a certain point, draw the line and say that whether the outcome is what we want or not, that powerful people have to be held accountable when they cross the line. I think that, again, if he's probably only going to get a slap on the wrist, and that will not be a good result. but the process has to still go forward. And I think the more that the process happens, the more that we hold people accountable, you will eventually start seeing the penalties grow and grow and grow. Because if he did this, and all indications are that he did, and did other things as well, you know, who knows? Maybe you end up with an avalanche. If people start to see that, hey, they're going to get some measure of justice, however limited, maybe more people can come forward and see that, hey, the system isn't going to sandbag him. Because unfortunately, you know, for the victims, and again, we know most of the victims are women, you know, and trans people, that hey, there's going to be some accountability, even if it's not what we want. And then people will step forward, and when you start having, you know, because here's the one thing: you normally can't bring in people's past bad acts unless you can establish a pattern of behavior. So if every additional case builds the case to bring in all of them to say, hey, this is a pattern of bad behavior, and then that's when you get really significant sentences and significant punishment to somebody, because now you can say this isn't just somebody who had a bad day and decided to be a lech. This is somebody who is a predator who hurts lots of people, and we need to really nail them.
Well, and as I recall, there were actually 28 complaints against him. How many of those are strong enough to go criminal, I don't know, but I recall reading a few that I said, and I don't think this was the strongest one. There was another one where he had groped a woman as he was passing her that looked like a very strong case. There is one other thing that we haven't mentioned, and I think that this came up with police abusing their positions as policemen. It seems to me right now we don't appear to hold people in higher levels of either government or authority or any position like that to a higher level when it comes to the law when they break the law. I think if a police officer breaks the law, but he's not using his office to do so, he should be treated just like anybody else who's breaking the law. But if he actually uses his office to do so, I think the crime needs to be considered higher because they are leveraging a position of trust in order to commit a crime. This goes for, what's his name, who killed, oh God, my brain is fried. The Floyd, George Floyd.
Yeah, George Floyd.
Now that strikes me as a worse crime because he was using his shield as a police officer. If Floyd had attempted to defend himself, he could have gotten in a huge amount of trouble because he's striking a police officer. Doesn't matter if it's self-defense or not. So by nature of the fact he had the uniform on, he is in a superior position of power. Floyd really can't resist. So I think now it was murder just the same as it would have been for anybody else, and it doesn't strike me as the same crime. Now here with Cuomo, it seems to me if it was just some stranger doing this to a woman on the street, that's bad enough, but that's sort of the way these laws are written, is there's no sort of accounting for... People had such a hard time outing Cuomo for this because he's the fucking mayor, and right during a crisis when he was extremely popular during the start of the crisis. Oh, sorry, thank you, Governor. Yes, thank you. He was immensely popular during the start because he was like, look, he was getting on everybody's case saying, let's help, our people need help, and his popularity soared. So now what? How are you gonna complain against that? So what are your thoughts on, is it even possible to have, like, okay, if it's somehow an exacerbating situation if you're in a position of power like that?
Yeah, they can. I mean, there's I know, and there's all sorts of crimes. Like I'm going to use an extreme example, but in California, they have the crime of it's called special circumstances. So if you commit murder, there's one penalty. If you commit multiple murders at the same time, that's considered special circumstances, and that carries an extra penalty. In some states, they have hate crime laws where you can't criminalize hate in and of itself. But what you can do is they say, okay, if this is identified as a hate crime, we can attach extra penalties on top of whatever the normal penalty would be. So in this regard, I don't know what you would call it, but you could basically have something that said, if you are in a position of authority over someone and you commit a crime against them, that carries an extra penalty. And I think that would be very good, because I think that's really going to be the only thing that's really going to stop it. That not only are they going to be held accountable, but they're going to be held accountable in a bigger way. And this is part of the problem we have both with elected officials and with people in uniform, whether they're cops or whatever, is that, and it's not necessarily like the concept of qualified immunity isn't a bad one. It's the application of it, because basically what they've said is that, well, you have to establish that specific crime was already known to be, particularly bad. And it's like, there have been cops who have stolen from people, even though there's laws against stealing. They said, well, we didn't specifically have a case where we ruled on that, so it makes it impossible to have any additional ones, because you basically said it's like it's only from like up to that day, anything that happened before, and you don't allow for any new precedent. And so that's a big problem. And also, just to point out too, one mistake that people have with qualified immunity is qualified immunity only applies in civil cases, not in criminal cases.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's one thing that a lot of people get confused with. The thing is, though, is that there's a hesitancy, particularly with police, because the DAs have to work with the police. So are you gonna charge that police officer who's still got all their buddies back at the station, and you're gonna have to work with those people on your future cases? And unfortunately, not everywhere, but in several police precincts, it's almost like a gang. So rather than wash out the bad guys, they're like, well, that's one of my brothers, and it doesn't matter whether they do something good or bad. You're against them, so you're against me, which of course is the wrong attitude. And when you have that kind of attitude, it's very difficult to get real justice against somebody who's in uniform or who's even an elected official, because then they all work together and they're friends. And so there almost needs to be like an external body that's maybe not in that jurisdiction, who doesn't have any ties. You would think it would automatically be a conflict of interest, but that somehow people get away with it. So I think that would be essential, is to have something that says, because you're right. If you kill me, that's bad. But if you're an officer of the law or a firefighter or whoever, we've given you authority that you get to do things that the average person can't do, or you're an elected official and you have power over me, or you're my boss or whatever, and you harm me, that's worse. That is worse. You've abused, not only have you committed the crime, but you've abused your authority.
Yep. I heard it put this way too, which is police actually do have a license to kill. It's qualified. It's they can't just kill anybody they want to, but they could kill people in a set of circumstances that you or I would go to jail for. I mean, they carry a firearm, and they are in fact instructed to kill under certain circumstances, and it's sort of like, okay, that has to, in my view, carry with it added. Not just responsibility, but sort of added penalties, or if you violate, yes, added liability as well. You have to something has to. All right, perfect. So what did you want to hit next?
Real quick, the other big problem about that too is if there is a suit, the taxpayer ends up paying for it instead of the officers or their pension fund or whatever. Now, what was I can't remember some of the other things you ran down.
I'll run them down in a second, but the Seven Dwarfs again. So one of the problems is, there was some hubbub about, the cigarette companies got hit hard because they lied.
Oh, right.
No individuals did.
They didn't. And then we're talking about accountability. Yeah. This is a big part of the problem. Again, in just what we were just talking about, because the same lack of accountability for elected officials and for police and so forth happens with companies, because particularly for big corporations. So somebody's the CEO of the company, they're acting on behalf of the company, even though they personally are committing crimes. A lot of stuff gets shielded, because that's part of what a corporation does. And it's worse. Put the corporation in jail. It's much worse for big companies, because like a small company, just say if I committed tax fraud, I didn't, but if I did, I have an LLC, so it's called a pass through. So from the IRS perspective, that's just a label on me. That my company name is just a label for me, so I can buy insurance. But they're still going to go after me personally if I did that in the cause of my name. But if I had Globochem, and I'm a corporate, I'm the right corporation, I can hide behind all of that. Very few people actually ever face any sort of accountability. And unfortunately, the workers, they're the workers are the ones that pay the penalty, because the company either goes out of business or has to pay a lot of money in fines or whatever. But the people at the top almost never face any accountability. Dennis Kozlowski, Dennis the Menace. He's about the only one I could think of. The guy who ruined Tycho.
Jesus. It's like on the tip of my tongue, but
that was the previous meltdown. That was the 2001 meltdown. And so what happens? Basically they got him on. Basically, the way they were really able to get him is because he used company funds for personal things in large quantities, and they got him on embezzlement.
So Jake 4D just put this in, and I think this is interesting. That his family seems to have this line of thinking: police need to be above the law. They cannot uphold the law if they have to follow it. I understand the logic. Actually, the logic makes some sense in a very twisted way. But I would suggest police need to follow the law. They can't uphold the law if they get to break it. They have a certain amount of power that is obviously they can speed if they're trying to chase somebody. Yep. They can potentially kill someone if it's in defense of themselves or others, or if they're but however, what ends up happening in a lot of states, like I know Amadou Diallo, that was the guy that was shot 41 times in New York City. He was sitting on his porch, and an unmarked car came screeching around the corner. Four plainclothes officers jump out with guns drawn, and he runs, and he goes to get his key, and he had a wallet that had keys in it, and they shot him 41 times. Yep.
I saw an interview, or heard an interview with one of the jurors after the case, and the juror was angry because they said, well, I wanted to convict them, but the way the law is written, I couldn't, because basically the way the law was written is all you had to believe is that if it was reasonable for them to think they were in danger, that was enough. And of course, you can always say, it's almost always reasonable if you're chasing somebody. It's almost always reasonable to say you think you're in danger. So that's literally a license to kill people and get away with it, whether it was justifiable or not.
Which kind of reminds me of, I don't want to go too far off the deep end, but the trans panic, or the I forget what it's called, but the panic law in at least several states in the South, if you're a cis male and you encounter somebody that you thought was a cis female, turns out they're a trans female, and you panic and kill them. It's like, okay, it's a recognized condition. It's okay. And it's like, it's that level of just completely unhinged, because you can justify killing anybody at that point. Oh, I was scared of them.
And
they surprised me. I was startled.
Yeah. And that to me is one of the most disgusting laws I've ever heard. And I always do the thing of like, okay, if for anyone who thinks it's justified, change whatever it is to black people or Jews or something like that. If you still think, or women, or all women, if you think it's okay to kill all women or all black people or all Jews because of this thing, and then you're probably a Nazi. But but usually that's the point that most people will go, oh, okay, that's not so cool. Well, then if it's not cool for those other three groups, it's not cool to do to trans people.
I can't. You've actually met people who think that that's. I've never met anyone who actually wants to argue that that's okay. I've met a number of people who have argued, and I'm perfectly happy to see this, that men can have, and women can have it too, depending on the circumstances, a sudden fight or flight response when they're met with a sudden, change in expectations that way, and especially if they're, I don't know, Southern, like, conservative upbringing. I can imagine it has a profound impact on you as a person in a split second. Guess what? We all go through shit like that in our lives at some point or another. How you get from there to it's okay to kill someone is mind-boggling. I have no doubt that this, whatever condition is that they've diagnosed, could be real.
We know there are people who would justify it because they passed the law, and kept their elected offices.
Yeah,
because if people weren't okay with it, they would have either gone out and protested and stopped it, or they would have voted the people out after doing it, and they didn't. Which is, again, it shows you how disgusting our society is towards trans people.
We have to do a deep dive on that because that's one that I still don't know how that. Yeah, we should. Okay, moving forward, we're gonna get to. So we have Meta Platforms was next. So that's Facebook's new name, Meta, or Meta Platforms. So they've changed their name and are doing this thing. The high school, which I don't know if you had heard about, Hazard High School, which is just something that I've seen the pictures and it's genuinely disgusting. I mean, it provokes unpleasant response just looking at them, and it's a bunch of young high school boys literally grinding on their teachers and the principal, and I don't. Wow. And then Alec Baldwin, and then ExxonMobil denying. So those are the ones we got left, and then there may have been something else that you would want to hit. I think that covers most of the stuff.
So Porpoise corrected me and you, I guess. That whole transparent thing, it's not that they made a law making it illegal, it's that states had to make a law making it illegal. But still, the fact that it's not illegal everywhere.
So it's set as a precedent. It was a legal defense. I'm remembering this now. Porpoise is absolutely right. So thank you for the correction, Porpoise. So it's not a law. It was set as a precedent. It succeeded. That was the defense. It succeeded. But now that the precedent is set, anybody can fucking do that. So then unless
it's outlawed in that district. Yes, as far as Meta. Well, I mean, all this is Facebook has gotten the black eye for their shitty behavior, and now they're trying to, distance themselves. This is like, the company that poisoned the Love Canal. They changed their name too, so that they could, escape from people knowing what they're all about.
Blackwater.
But I mean, as long as they don't fuck up, I sold off some of my shares today because I got to use the money for that company I'm buying. But I still have 75 shares, so don't fuck up my money, Facebook or whatever you're calling yourself.
Oh, don't worry, they don't want to. They seem to care about that more than anything else. Well, Blackwater did the same thing right after all the people they killed in Iraq. And it's like they changed it to Swan Consulting or whatever it was. It's just like Blackwater, motherfucker.
But I mean, as far as their their VR bullshit that they're talking about, this was a stupid idea 25 years ago when the first company tried it, and it was stupid. 15 years ago when the next company tried it, and it'll be stupid now. I mean, this idea that we're going to go and we're going to have these animated avatars of us speaking. When I can talk to you right now and I can see your real face, why the fuck would I do that other bullshit? It's just so ridiculous.
Well, and this actually got two things. I realized there was one that I didn't include in the rundown that I should have, and there was one that you mentioned, which I hadn't even heard of. Charlie Dent, conservatives asking Charlie Dent when we can use guns on Democrats, and I hadn't heard this. So what is this? Yeah,
I saw it on Dollamore, and I actually heard the quote. Let me see if I can find it again, because I want to post a.
So definitely find that.
But basically, there was a gathering of right wingers, and one of the people asked this former representative, at what point do we get to use the guns on these Democrats? And he actually stopped everybody because people were acting. They thought he was joking. He says, no, I'm not joking. Basically, they're stealing our elections. When can we kill them with our guns? And so this is the thing. This wasn't somebody. And the thing about how he worded that, it's not when will we have to. When, because I can understand that. If you really thought democracy was being stolen, at what point do we have to turn to violence? But he's literally, when do we get to? Which says this fucker is sitting there in his house, dreaming about murdering Democrats.
Yep. So Sinister has a correction.
Charlie Kirk.
I couldn't find it. I was looking for it. I was hunting for it for an hour. I was like, who said this? Okay.
Yeah. So there's the link, so people can watch it for themselves, and you can watch the entire 4-minute and 20-second video. So there's no question that this guy is we need to, shouldn't we be killing Democrats, basically?
Well, and I hate to ask this. I can't believe these words are about to come out of my mouth. Is there anything new on Trump's new media project called Truth?
Yes.
What do we know about that? All I know is
Well,
he's
what I know is the stock had risen to about $175 and is now back down to 65. So it's already tanking. And
65 is not
it
bad.
appears that some of the institutional investors are actually starting to short it. So
really,
so they think it's a dead duck. So they're just looking to profit off the bones.
All right. Well, so we've already covered that. I mean, we've talked about. I haven't seen much, but we showed his first message out and how it's going to be an organization for truth, and they're going to get to the truth of things. And I was just like, I've never heard the words Trump and truth in the same sentence without a negation, a very big negation in there somewhere. Something along the lines of Trump wouldn't know the truth if it came up and bit him in the ass, and then he bent it over and paid it $5,000.
And the other part of the fact that,
stolen money.
If you recall, during the Soviet era, there was the Soviet newspaper was called Pravda, which means truth in English. Yep. So that's what a lot of people were making hay about that he's literally going like Soviet era name for his thing. And I saw one great meme that said, "Sign up for Truth Social and become a truth socialist."
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, that's a really good one. Oh, that's a good one. Well, it reminded me, too, of when Bush said that we're going to conduct a lightning war in Iraq. I was like, that does not translate into German well. Don't know. No. Ixnay, lightning war.
That's got bad connotations.
Yeah, Sister Porpoise said this, and I did see this.
Cool name, bad connotations.
Yeah. Well, it's a party of God, too, right? You know what party of God translates to? It's Hezbollah. That was one of the, that was Taylor Greene of Jewish space laser fame. Yes, her. Yeah, that's right. She apparently has lost a lot on the. She invested a lot, and I did catch that. All right, so a free speech site where you're not allowed to criticize the owner. Yeah, that's right. All right, so we're gonna keep an eye on that, and then I think all that was left was Rust and
school.
And the both
school.
Rust. The school. We were talking about the school, and so that's unbelievable. And the fact that even they haven't come out and condemned this yet, and it's pretty. I mean, look, it's not even rated R. It's not, but it's very hard to see. I think, and we're not going to show it because there's no point. It doesn't have value to show it. But it's not pleasant.
I consider it rated R in the fact that they have underage people.
Well, if they're 18, I mean, that's the only, because it's supposed to be seniors, but you know what? By the way, oftentimes in seniors, they'll have a 17-year-old. So but even if.
That's right. Yeah, I did not turn 18 until I was 2 months into college.
So so at least some of them are going to be, and even if they're not, you couldn't tell. I mean, you couldn't tell if they were or weren't. They were close enough and the fact that it's even remotely close to acceptable, according to and they've been doing this for at least 4 years now. They've been doing this but they literally had the defense. Oh, we've done it all the time, but this one got out of hand, and then it's 4 years back. We've got footage of at least as bad, and the guy rubbing the principal's chest, in my view, it's over. I mean that probably should be indictable. I don't know if it is, but it should be.
It should at least be fireable. I mean, geez. Well, see, this is the problem. We talked before about conflict of interest. So he's the mayor. So so the school board probably reports to him. So they're not going to fire him because they got to work under the guy.
Well,
and so the only way that
the Department of Education
any
won't
actual
do it.
Justice if the state gets involved.
The Department of Education won't do it. The State Department of Education said they won't do it because they don't deal in local matters. It's for the local community and the local district. I'm sitting there going like, I get that. Actually, I'm sitting there going like, you're Republican, right? It's the whole like the federal government shouldn't touch the states, and I guess the states can't touch the districts. Is that what the fucking?
Well, the funny thing is, the states can't touch the districts except that when they write laws that say, well, a district can't write their own minimum wage that's higher than the state minimum wage, or they can't write different a more friendly voting rights so that it's easier for people to vote. Then all of a sudden, then they're happy to push down on the smaller districts.
Or no district can enforce a mask mandate of any kind for any reason, and you make it illegal for a district, a town, or any business to so they're for free business, but not
I want to challenge Porpoise on that assertion that school boards typically report to the county. I don't know, maybe the states you've lived in New Jersey, that's definitely not the case.
Yeah, I've never been. I've been a teacher. I've never figured out who the school board. Yeah,
it's not the case in New York City either. And New York City is literally the biggest school system in the country. The school board, you have the local school boards, and they report to the bigger school board, and that school board reports to the mayor. So, I don't know about that state. Maybe it's different there, but.
Well, and frankly, to tell you the truth, it looks like there was another teacher. It looked like maybe the PE teacher. I couldn't tell who was doing this. And this was, by the way, one of the key words here that has been overlooked is that it was an assembly, meaning the entire school was present. I don't know if anybody's complained. I don't know. But one of the fathers said, they had no idea and they were absolutely disgusted when they saw this. And, some of the teachers that were, that were getting lap dances and so on and so forth. I mean, it's got to be hard, especially in Kentucky, to find qualified teachers and find teachers who want to do the job and that will do it right. But this is one of those you can't keep. It seems to me that there's going to have to be some serious damage done at the staff level there, because anybody who had this done and didn't. I mean, first suspend all of them until you sort who's guilty of what, and if you have to do it with pay, then do it with pay. But they should not. I don't. Yeah. All right. So, and then what we've got left is the Alec Baldwin shooting, which we can talk about if there's anything left unsaid, and then just the top executives testifying, the top oil executives testifying to Congress. So those are the two that we had left, unless there's anything else you also wanted to hit.
Yeah, I mean, the Alec Baldwin thing, there's a couple things about that. I mean, first off, obviously he was led to believe that it was safe. Yeah. And he probably, I mean, I know if I'm not an actor, but if I were an actor, I've handled guns only a couple times in my life. I'm nervous with them. I would be afraid of them even if I was told it was safe. But even then, I don't have the knowledge to verify. If somebody hands me a gun and says this is cold, I don't have the knowledge to check for myself. So he'd have to depend on people who basically, and apparently the assistant director who handled this, he was in trouble in the past for maybe not to the same degree, but basically for unsafe practices when it came to firearms. So I want to know is how the fuck did this guy have a job that involved safety of guns when he failed in the past? And so that doesn't make any sense. Two, now apparently, like you said, he was supposed to aim toward the camera and fire. I get that. And most of the people that worked on that set were off the set because when they were about to do this, I don't understand why in the area of digital filming, why there wasn't a remote viewing setup so that the people that were behind the camera or where they were standing wouldn't be standing potentially in the line of fire. Again, technologically speaking, there's zero reason for that to happen.
That's a good point. Well, I assume. I mean, I guess it's an extra layer of safety to do that, and that may be an important thing. I assume if you're the cinematographer, you may want to be making adjustments as you're watching it happen, and if you're watching it happen from far away, I think what happened was the cinematographer was literally looking through the lens and moving the camera to adjust it to get the right shot. And when he fired through the lens, hit the cinematographer. Now, she could have looked at it from somewhere else, but moving the camera and adjusting wouldn't have been nearly as easy. And I suspect that's why she was killed, was because she wanted to get the perfect shot. She's standing behind the camera, moving it and trying to get everything just right, framing the background, getting everything for the shot, and then it discharged.
Well, right, but I mean, when the discharge is supposed to happen, the whole point of it, yeah, I guess I totally agree with you about the lining it up, but the lining it up's happening prior to the discharge.
Yes.
Once the discharge actually happens, that's looking through the lens to see, hey, what do we actually see? What do we actually see in the shot? And again, that can be done remotely.
I got the impression he didn't necessarily mean to pull the trigger. He was pulling it out and sort of aiming it. And I think he was practicing pulling it as quickly as possible because he wanted to look expert. He wanted to look cool and awesome and expert. So he wanted to go, huh, huh, and he was just pulling it in, putting it out, and he was practicing that maneuver when it went off. So presumably he didn't mean to he pulled it out. He was just he had practiced that repeatedly, and on one of them it discharged.
Yeah, I mean it's still. I mean, it just seems like it's a failure, up and down. Because even there, that practice. Well, again, he had no idea. He thought it was a cold gun. But he should have been giving. I mean, take the freaking magazine out and clear the chamber. Then it's and then hand him that to let him practice with that.
Well, those guns shouldn't be able to fire. I mean, they've got blocks in the. They sometimes do convert. In fact, usually 9 times out of 10, they convert old firearms for props. And then what they do is they put in blocks into each cylinder, so you couldn't get a bullet in there if you wanted to. And even if you managed to wedge one in, you couldn't close the. Whatever it is. I don't. It looks like multiple failures all across the. And I feel really bad for the guy because he seems like the kind of guy who's going to take this to heart, and he's basically. He's just like he's canceling all his other projects for now, and he's I don't know. So, yeah, that was yeah. All right. Well, was there anything else that you wanted to cover before we bail?
No, I guess that's it. We covered some good stuff.
Yep.
What was there was one other thing you mentioned.
It was the Exxon, the testimony of the big oil executives today, which oil today is more powerful than tobacco was then. That's a little scary because they got away with a shit ton then, and they were impossible to stop because they litigated everybody to death. And now big oil, and not only big oil. So here's the thing: people ask, why have there been no? And I ask this, and I get pissed about this. Why have there been no indictments and nobody gone to jail over the 2007-2008 economic collapse? And one of the reasons is because the amount of lawyers that these guys bring, they outspend the government by like 5 to 1. The government's trying to prosecute these cases and they get litigated to death by 5 to 1. And the question is, how much money can the government actually spend prosecuting these cases when they have almost an unlimited budget? That's not the only problem, but that's one of the bigger problems in bringing these in. So now we've got the big oil execs. They're testifying and they're saying, and we've seen the internal documentation. Exxon concluded in 1987 that global warming was real and it was man-made. They concluded that. That was what their scientists, they paid their own scientists to review it. That was an internal memo that got released, and like, yeah, it's us. It's absolutely us. It's man-made. It's the oil that we're doing, and there's no dispute. That was what they were told by their own scientists. So they're sitting out there now today testifying that it is real, but that they are not spreading disinformation about it. That's what they're testifying to.
Yeah. One thing I had said years ago, that because I saw this coming, was that to try to keep the oil companies from standing in the way of the progress that we were going to need to stave off climate change, was to try to give them a benefit that they could use their power that they had at the time to kind of transition themselves to be energy companies as opposed to being oil companies, because it's that mindset. So if you think of yourself as an energy company, you don't care about the source of the energy as long as you're making money off of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that makes sense.
But when you're entrenched in, I'm an oil company and I got to sell oil and I'm going to do anything I can to stop people from switching away from oil or fossil fuels in general, it's going to be. It's going to be an issue, but unfortunately we're stuck here. And now the good part is is that fossil fuels are getting more expensive than the alternatives.
Yes.
So just as a matter of economics, like I saw something recently when Trump took office, there was like 60,000 coal jobs. And he was supposedly going to do all these things that was going to help him. Of course, he didn't do anything because there's nothing you can do to save those jobs.
Yeah, you can't.
They're already down to 30,000. So in 4 years, they lost half their jobs. Because coal is actually, in most applications now, coal is getting more expensive than the alternatives. It's more expensive, generally speaking, than the natural gas under most circumstances. And it's getting more expensive than wind or solar. So why would, so basically it's just the places that are too expensive for them to convert that are staying there. But as new facilities get built, whether they're natural gas power plants or as wind goes in and solar goes in, it's getting to the point where those coal plants are going to shut down. Now, coal's never going to totally go away because there are some other uses for it. But as far as a major energy source, it doesn't have much time left. Because there's just not going to be, and the usage didn't drop by half because efficiencies you can still, I think the usage dropped by about 30%.
All right. Well,
Corbett says this really isn't good news for rural people because electric vehicles aren't cheap. Well, I mean, the thing is that there are a lot of electric vehicles that are comparable in price. They're not exactly the same price, but they are coming down. And oil's not going away. I mean, we're talking about coal right now. I mean, oil is we're a long way from oil going away. But so I wouldn't worry about that.
Well, and I mean, unfortunately, every major economic shift does have people who suffer, and it's trying to prevent that suffering that slows down those shifts. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But on the flip side, when it's something that has to get done, it's sort of like, you have to try to find a way to integrate. And I do think that as more people buy electronic vehicles, the price of those vehicles will go down as well. Now, that doesn't help people in the margins or in the meantime, but the faster this accelerates, I think the faster you rip off the Band-Aid in general, the better for everybody, and certainly the better along down the line.
Yeah.
But I really do like what you said
about point about the aftermarket. I mean, the thing about it is there hasn't been much of an aftermarket because there wasn't as much of a market. But the more electric vehicles that get put on the road, the more used ones they'll end up being available for people to buy. The other thing too is also, I mean, yes, people in rural areas tend to be poorer, but that's not always true either. I mean, not everybody in rural areas is he's sitting in dirty overalls, and that's a stereotype. But because there are here's the nice thing about tech companies, is tech company doesn't really care where it's not like for the most part, again, this varies, but it's not like the old heavy industry where you had to have a rail line and you had to have a large body of water, whether it was a river or a lake or something nearby, and you had to have all these things. You just need to have power and a workforce that has the skills to do the job. And so it's enticing, and this is the reason why a lot of companies have moved to Texas, because Texas is cheaper, taxes are lower. So places have moved from California to Texas, which is pissing off Texans because it's making Texas, more purple. Because people in tech tend to be liberal for the most part. So, and you're starting to see it even into areas that have typically been rural or less populated, because it's like, hey, land is cheap and taxes are cheap, and we can go out here and we can, and all we need to do is have an educated workforce in that, in that area, and you can move people and people and what it does too is if you have a company in your town that does something, you're more incented to say, oh, well, I'm going to go get an education in that instead of doing whatever else I might have done if that opportunity wasn't close. So I think you're going to start seeing a better distribution of the workforce over time, because you don't have that many. I mean, there's only like 2% of the population's in agriculture.
Yeah, yeah, it's as a percentage of the workforce. It's a small. Farmers work hard, and they do need at sometimes much more labor, less when harvesting. But the rest of the time, it's a much smaller. It's certainly less than a major business. There was
And
a
I just
great
want to
comment.
answer
Yeah,
before we
please.
go real quick. I just want to answer something. So when I lived in Allentown, PA, I paid school taxes to the town, and I live in my current town. My property tax, and there's also there's some additional tax for school that goes to the town and the town I grew up in. And I'm not telling people who they are because that's identifying information I don't care to give. But I don't live in Allentown anymore, and I'm not from there originally, so I can say that, and I don't care.
Uh, I'll toss one in there as well. Global cooling was discovered in the 70s. So was global warming. They were both discovered, and they're both real. The question that they argued, and this is unfortunately one of the things that muddied the waters later, because people who remember this, when people said, well, global warming's a thing, like, wait a minute, in the 70s, they were telling us the globe is cooling. Yes, there are cooling factors, and there are warming factors, and scientists were sitting there trying to figure out which one would dominate. And they spent a very long time studying the cooling effects. They spent a very long time studying the warming effects, and they've discovered that because of the amount of CO2 we're pumping in, the warming effects are absolutely winning. So you have a net global warming. But that caused this huge confusion because there was a discovery of global cooling, which is real. But it's getting its ass kicked, and that's where the problem lies. Again, that's what's called nuance, and I guess a lot of people really don't like it. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. I think, and definitely a lot of people in the live chat making a lot of excellent points. So thank you all very much. Joe, as always, thank you so much for coming. Look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for being so accommodating, too. We ended up having Dr. John Shook last night for the definition of atheism, and which everybody just... was an interesting show. A few people were like, you're doing this again? I don't remember doing it the first time, but I understand the complaint.
How'd it go?
It went very well. I like Shook. He knows what he's talking about. He had a perspective I was not expecting. So it was it was a good show. And then so that was, and then we've got tomorrow night After Dark. And anyone who wants to join us, 10 p.m. Eastern. It's the only one we start that a little later so that oh my God, is please tell me, breaking news. Taylor Green is live on Instagram. Please tell me that's true. Titan, please tell me that's true. Please tell me that's true. At any rate, so tomorrow After Dark, anyone who wants to come in, call in, have a chat. We usually go like 3 or 4 hours. So just about any time tomorrow night, if you're free and want to come join us, please do. If you've gotten this far, hopefully you like the show. Please thumbs up, like, and subscribe. That really does help us out in the algorithm, and it's just one way to help make sure that we can keep delivering content to you. Share and talk about the show to other people. That also really is a huge help. But in the meantime, thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you guys on Friday. And then, Joe, you on Wednesday, normal, same bat time, same bat channel next week. So thank you so much for helping us out. Look forward to seeing you then.